Hey there, badass. How about a break from those endless emails, client calls, and screen time? Yep, shut down that laptop, set your notifications on silent, and come join us at the Ladies Kickin' Ass networking and community event, Sip, Sass, and Kickin' Ass. It's November 16th, which is a Thursday, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Forum Lounge in Chandler, Arizona. Come mingle face to face with a bunch of amazing boss babes in service based businesses from around the valley. You can make genuine connections over cocktails. Yes, please sign me up. All the information for this fun event is in the show notes, along with a link for you to grab your free, yeah, I said free, ticket to come to this event. We cannot wait to see your beautiful faces at the event. Welcome to the Ladies Kickin' Ass podcast, where we raise our voices and honor the badass achievements of women in the service industry. Get ready for empowering conversations, inspiring stories, and a whole lot of ass-kicking energy. Join us as we redefine what it means to be bold, fearless, and unapologetically YOU, babe. This is your platform, your community, and your source of inspiration. So buckle up, get ready to rock and roll, and let's show this world just how much we can accomplish. Welcome to the Ladies Kickin' Ass podcast. Hey ladies, welcome back to another episode of Ladies Kickin' Ass. Today is going to be pure fire, and I know that for sure because my guest today, Tess Waresmith, is fire. And she knows her shit about money and finances and all of that crazy, scary stuff that really isn't scary, but we work it up in our minds and then we tell ourselves, we're just not good at numbers, or I'm just not good at this. And it's because we really haven't sat down and figured it out. And I get it because a lot of the information that comes out, I'm like, it's so damn far over my head. I have no idea what they're even talking about to start with. So that is where Tess is going to come in, and she is going to kind of give us some baby steps, talk to us in normal lady language, and we're going to learn about finances today. So Tess is the mastermind behind Wealth with Tess, which is a platform dedicated to demystifying the investment landscape for corporate women, entrepreneurs like a lot of you, and anyone seeking financial independence. What I love so much on your website too, Tess, was like, it's up to you to determine what your financial future looks like. And I think for centuries and things that were modeled for us was that the man took care of it, or the man provided, or the man did this. And that is not the world that we live in. I've never lived in that world where a man took care of me. So this is something very near and dear to my heart. I think a lot of women that do that have a reason behind it. For me, it was watching my mom have to be stuck with my dad that wasn't very nice to her because she didn't have any financial means to do anything. And I was like, I'll be damned if that ever happens to me. So almost to my detriment sometimes too. So it's very good to be able to learn how to have conversations, what you can do to best make your money work for you instead of trading time for money all of the time because you only have so much time, but how you can make your money work for you. So Tess, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya. I'm so excited to be on the podcast. I'm such a huge fan of yours and what you do. And I actually, for the listeners, I met Tanya through a friend, and a friend was like, she runs a septic business. And I thought that was so freaking cool because we need more women owning businesses and service industries. And so I just think you're awesome. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for recognizing that too, because I can't stress enough. I talk about it all the time. Anybody that listens to this podcast, I'm so passionate about getting more women in this. Not only does it change the landscape of what the service industry looks like to our consumers, because there's just a more personal touch put on things, but also provides a better place for employees to want to come and work in those environments. And there is not a shortage of homes needing home service companies, but there is definitely a shortage of workers that want to work for home service companies. So when y'all call a plumber and you need them to come out yesterday because your toilet's backed up and it's overflowing in your house, you might as well get on the phone with the restoration company because he can't come out for 3 weeks because he doesn't have anybody to work. So that is a huge landscape right now that we are all dealing with. But Tess, why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory and tell us why you wanted to leave your corporate job and actually pursue the world of entrepreneurship and helping women learn about finances?
Yeah, so you actually touched on something in your intro that was very similar for me. I grew up watching my mother be very afraid of money, and my father left when we were very young. And she told me stories about being a single mom with two babies and, looking for somebody to help her with her kids. And thankfully, she ended up marrying my stepdad, who is an amazing guy. And so I had modeling that money was scarce. It was something that we needed to hoard. And I had a lot of fear around money, but I also knew very early on that I never wanted to be in a situation where I had to rely on somebody else. And so my mother was divorced a lot. My biological father was divorced 5 times. So I didn't have a lot of faith in the, partnership system. And I thought, okay, I want to make sure that I can take care of myself. So after graduating from university, I graduated into a recession, couldn't find a job, ended up with the weirdest job of all time as an aerial acrobat on cruise ships. That was my first job. And the reason this is relevant to money is because I was able to save a lot of money working on this cruise ship because I didn't have expenses, I didn't have to pay for food. So weirdly enough, that kind of kickstarted my opportunity to get ahead financially. And so I saved a bunch of money, but I had this limiting belief that I was not smart enough to manage my money on my own. I couldn't learn how to invest and that I just had to find somebody else to do it for me. So I gave all my money to a financial advisor and just said, make it be more, and kind of walked away and turned around. And unfortunately, I ended up realizing years later, after I started getting more interested in investing, that I was paying thousands of dollars in fees, thousands of dollars in commissions. I was sold a financial product that was better suited for somebody in their late 50s. I was in my mid 20s. I can't get that money back until I'm 65, at which point it'll be worth very little. And so that was really, really upsetting to me. And I had a lot of shame around that. And then after I lost it, honestly, it was tens of thousands of dollars in fees. So after I lost that money, and probably cried for a while. Then I was like, okay, I need to get a handle on my finances because this is not cool. There's got to be a better way. And what I discovered was this insane truth that simple investing strategies work really well and anyone can do it. And we live in this incredible time where there's so much access for the average person to invest using really simple strategies, even if you're totally new, even if you're have some debt, even if you're super short on time, which most of us are, it's not that hard. And so when I learned this, I thought I feel now morally obligated to teach every single person, and especially women, how they can do this for themselves and make their hard-earned money grow. Because we work, 40, if you're an entrepreneur, probably well more than 40 hours a week. And you want to make sure that money is working for you so that you don't have to work even harder. And so once I learned all this, now I own an education business and I do small group coaching programs for amazing badass women. And it's just been such a dream. So that's my story. That's how I got here. And I just can't imagine doing anything else at this point because it's so exciting to watch people take control of their finances.
Oh my gosh, yes. And there's so many people that need you. I think one of the most intimidating things for women is for me, okay, I'm gonna say for me, is that if I say, I don't know what that is, like that makes me look dumb. So I'm gonna go do all this research first instead of just going to a source like Tess and saying, hey, can you help me like navigate through this? Because I don't really understand how this works. We try to figure it out ourselves. And I think it is a lot of the financial planners that approach me for sure, or people that I meet, are men. And honestly, like I try to do as much business as I can with other females. That's just my preference of being able to do business. And it's very difficult to run into someone like you, Tess, that does like financial coaching and will teach you the processes so you can do it yourself. Where even the women that you find in it is they're like paid financial planners. That's what they do for a living. So if you were to give like easy tactics or just maybe the first step to start at if you're new to investing, where would you tell people to start or maybe what questions to ask to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that you would want to make sure, there are some tactical things you want to take care of first. So if you're thinking about investing and you're trying to figure out, am I ready to invest? There's a couple of really easy boxes that you need to check. The first one is to make sure that you have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months expenses. That goes for everybody. And you never know when shit's going to happen. So that's your oh shit fund. You have to have that. You also need to make sure that you've paid off most of your high interest debt, which is anything over 7%. But really, if you've done those two things, even if you only have $10 to start investing, you're ready to start investing and growing your money. And so I think one thing that's really important for everybody to understand is that you don't need a lot of money to get started, and you don't need to invest in ways that require a lot of your time. And so, once you've figured out how to pay off the high interest debt, once you have your emergency fund, then you can start investing. And then it's about getting an education. And the cool thing about this 21st century and all the information online is there's so many amazing people sharing information for free. I host free workshops all the time, beginner investing workshops. There's so much information on YouTube. And one thing I would say is, if you don't know where to start, pick one topic. So you could pick a topic about retirement accounts. Like, what are retirement accounts and how do they work and how do they help me save on taxes? You don't have to learn everything there is to know about investing in one go. There's amazing podcasts out there. Money with Katie is one of the best podcasts out there. And it has so much information to help people to get started investing. So there's endless resources. And I think you just have to pick a topic and start learning, and find somebody that you like too. Like, if you're listening to somebody and they're dropping financial jargon and you have no idea what they're saying, like, move on, because there are a lot of cool people in this space that are just like me, that really want to help the average person by demystifying finances in a way that, sets the jargon aside and in a way that you can understand. So if you're listening to somebody and you're like, I have no freaking clue what they're talking about, then you want to find somebody else. And there are a lot of great creators out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Find somebody that isn't using all these big fancy words that you don't know. I love listening to Nicole Lappin's podcast too, because she breaks down a lot of really kind of could be complex things. And I'm like, every time I listen to her, I'm like, I understood what she was saying. Like, she was talking about the housing market of stuff, where you listen to even like I have friends that are in real estate. I have friends that do mortgages, on both sides of the coin of things. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. But then I listen to her podcast for like 5 minutes, and they're like good little nuggets of stuff. So Money with Katie and Nicole Lappins, we'll put those in the show notes, because those are good things for people to be able to listen to so that they can start feeling more confident. I think when you start listening to it more, it's just like anything in your life. When you start focusing on things more, things start getting better. It can be relationships, it can be, your kids, your health, your money, your business, whatever you focus on, things just start getting better. And you don't have to learn it all overnight. Like, it's give yourself some damn grace and just pick a little topic, like you said, and just move on from there. That's awesome. So when we're talking about things like this, would you be so kind to share your experience with how you were able to start investing and what helped you grow a net worth of over $1 million by doing that with your simple tactics?
Yes, absolutely. So I break down investing into 4 simple steps. And one of the biggest myths about investing is that the hardest part is trying to pick stocks and to time the market. And, you have to have an economics degree or a finance degree or like reading the news every single day to invest successfully. And none of that is true. There are really simple ways to buy and hold long-term investments that can significantly help you build wealth. But it all starts with mindset. So one thing that I think people miss is they try to jump straight into investing without figuring out a couple things first. Like, first of all, what are your goals? Like, where do you want to get to? What do you want to have saved for retirement? And there are actual ways to figure that out. There's something called the 4% rule, which is a rule that a lot of people don't know about. And it's a way to calculate a number that you could live off of your investments for 30 years. And so what the rule means is, if you withdrew 4% of your investments in retirement, you could continue to do that for 30 years and you would have enough money to live on. And so that's a really valuable thing to understand, because if you're trying to save money or invest and you have no idea where you're going, like where your end goal is, it's going to feel just like a hamster wheel. So the first thing is to figure out your goals, your long-term goals, how much money you have in retirement, and then also short-term, what are you trying to do in the next few years? Are you trying to buy a house, or do you have to buy a car, whatever it is? And the reason why that foundation is so important when we're talking about investing is because that's going to help you make decisions about what to do with your money. So your money comes in and you're like, okay, I have this money to pay for my expenses. That's great. Now, ideally, you have some left over. You are saving some of that maybe for a short term purchase. Anything in the next 3 to 5 years is money that I wouldn't invest. And then if you have money left over after that, then that's money that you are able to put into retirement accounts. Now, ideally, you're prioritizing retirement too. So you're not just like hoping that you have money left over at the end of the month. So that does require some money management and going through your budget and figuring out where you're spending money. That initial foundation, figuring out where your money is going, how money is coming in and out of your life, and then how much of that money that you could actually invest in yourself. And really what we're talking about here is paying your future self, right? We're not talking about this money doesn't like go away. This is how you get to get your time back later on in life. So that's really important. That's the first step when we're talking about getting started investing, is figuring out your cash flow, figuring out how much money you can invest. Once you've done all that, then what you want to do is take advantage of retirement accounts. Now, retirement accounts are like one of the least sexy things to talk about. Everyone's like eyes glaze over, but here's why they're exciting. And I want to frame it this way so that you get excited about it. Retirement accounts, especially if you're a business owner, help you save a ton of money on taxes. Retirement account equals an opportunity for you to save on taxes. And that is so important because we like gloss over these accounts. We're like, oh, 401ks, IRAs, they're whatever. But this is a way for you to put more money in your pocket while growing your wealth for retirement. So you actually get two opportunities to make a big financial impact in your life. And so if you're a business owner, there's tons of different retirement accounts. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but I'm happy to drop some links and places where you can go in the show notes. And then once you've figured out those retirement accounts that can help you save on taxes, and again, that doesn't take a ton of time. That's a little bit of education, Googling what retirement accounts are great for entrepreneurs, and you'll find millions of articles for you. Then you figure out what to put in those retirement accounts. And this is where everyone freaks out and goes, I have to pick stocks. I have to time the market. I have to figure out what's going on. What's amazing about investing now for the average person is that you can buy really simple investments that hold a ton of different stocks at once so that you don't have to figure out which stock is doing best. You can just buy basically a huge basket of stocks of all different industries, and you can hold on to those. And the reason why that strategy works, and this is what I'm talking about here, baskets are funds like index funds, or you've probably heard of mutual funds. Index funds is a fund that holds a bunch of different stocks. And why this is great is because if you get an index fund that holds a bunch of different stocks in the stock market, you're going to get the average return of the stock market, which is roughly 10% minus inflation. So like 8%. So instead of trying to do all this fancy stuff, you set up your retirement account, you know how much money you want to contribute every month, and you invest it into a fund or a couple funds that hold a bunch of different stocks. You don't go in and change them all the time. You don't have to do a lot of fancy stuff. So really, it's like those 4 steps. It's figuring out your money mindset. Where do you want to go? Figuring out how much money you can invest per month, choosing some retirement accounts, and then choosing simple investments. And so if you're like wanting to learn more about that, just Google index funds and you'll see tons of information on how you can get started. So that's a very high level explanation. And I actually have a Savvy Investor Starter Pack that we can put in the show notes that walks through those 4 steps. But it really doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So that was obviously a very quick overview. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the order of operations you want to take to start investing.
Oh, such good info. Such good info. Because I think a lot of times, like, you'll hear, like, the Dave Ramsey's is like, all your debt paid off before you start investing anything, before you start doing this. And then, like, I've taken, like, Wealth Mastery from Tony Robbins, and he's like, it's so high level shit. Like, half the time, my husband and I were like, we have no idea what they're talking about. Like, it's great information, but I'm somewhere in between here that I need to figure this stuff out. So, I mean, it's such simple things, like having that emergency fund. There is nothing more important than that. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to tap into that thing, that is a stress relief times a bajillion if you've got that emergency fund set up. That I think that people sell that emergency fund a little bit short too. And it's kind of like real quick. It's like, got to have an emergency fund set up. But what does that actually look like to have an emergency fund set up? When you're telling people to set up their emergency fund, what do you tell them to account for in that emergency fund?
Yeah, so this is such a great question because especially for business owners, this is going to look different. I was just in my small group coaching program. I have a bunch of entrepreneurs in it now, and last night we were just talking about how much money you should have in it. And one of them asked, everyone says to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. 3 months does not feel like enough to me. That is a personal choice. And this is why it's so valuable to find a financial coach or a program or something so you can talk about these things. I agree. 3 months does not feel like nearly enough if shit hits the fan for me. So, as a business owner, you probably want to be a little bit more thoughtful in what your emergency fund looks like. And the great news is that emergency fund doesn't necessarily mean that cash is useless. There are actually ways that you can grow that money. So, for example, right now, at the time of this recording in 2023, there are high yield savings accounts, which if I just said that and you don't know what that is, like get a pen because I want you to go do this because this is going to be the easiest way for you to make a little bit more money right now. So a high yield savings account is just an online account. It's an online bank account that gives you a higher return on your money. So in a regular like Bank of America or Wells Fargo, you get like this garbage return. It's like 0.02%. It sucks. But high yield savings accounts are online banks. They're FDIC insured. They don't have brick and mortar locations, but they give you a much higher rate of return on your money. And it's a savings account. So there's no risk of it fluctuating. So as a business owner right now, if you put that money in a high yield savings account, some of them are offering 4 or 5% on your money. That's a huge percentage just for moving your money into an account that's going to give you a higher return. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a high yield savings account, like go open one right now. There are people that open this. If you have, 10, 20, 30,000, you're talking about hundreds or thousands of dollars just for moving your money over to an account. And by the way, most of the high yield savings accounts like Ally is my favorite because they have different savings buckets. They're way easier to use, like better interface. They have like more education, like they're way less stuffy than Bank of America. Sorry to shit on Bank of America, but not a huge fan. So like there's just better ways to do it. So anyway, so that is so important when it comes to like getting started. And same with short-term purchases too, especially as a business owner. If you're thinking about investing in your business, buying equipment for your business, whatever it is, think about where you can put that money where you're going to get a little bit of better return, because there's also business accounts that have high yield savings accounts that are going to give you more than just your average bank. So it is valuable to shop around and to find either a smaller bank that's going to give you a better return on your money, or at least an online bank that has a higher return.
Oh, such good info. Because for a lot of us, for me, savings is like, how much cash do I have in the safe? Which cash is still a good thing to have, but because that's always been kind of my thought process with stuff too. I mean, that's crazy. As a business owner, like you have a savings account set up, like you put money away for taxes and you put money away. Like I have one for repairs on my equipment because shit breaks down all the time and those trucks are really fucking expensive to fix. So I need to make sure, I mean, a tire can cost $1,000 on those things. Like I need to make sure that there's a fund in there. But if you can put them into business high yield savings accounts, I mean, at least you're making some money while the money's just sitting in there, waiting to be used. So that is really good info. And I love too that you mentioned like the online banks, or maybe even separating it. This is what I had to personally do. Separate it from like the bank that I use to do my business banking from. So it's not real simple that you're seeing those accounts every day and you're like, "Oh, I'm a little short," or "Oh, I could do this." And you're literally taking money from your pocket and putting it back into the business that should be saved somewhere else. Like that should not be your backup saving for your business stuff. I had to when I separated the two, I saved so much more money on the personal side than being able to log in to Chase and see it through everything. So just a little hint that has helped me a lot as a business owner there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important too, like to aggregate your accounts too. Like one other like quick win right away is if you don't have, and you can do this for your business and personally, and most people don't do this, and this is one of the quickest ways you can start to get illuminated about what you have. My favorite one is called Empower, and it's just a wealth aggregator, which sounds really fancy, but all that means is it's a place to connect all of your accounts. And so if you connect all your accounts to Empower, and I have a link for this, it's first of all, it's free. And you can see all your credit cards, you can see your mortgages, you can see your loans on equipment if you have that, you can see everything. So you can actually get like a sense of what all of your liabilities are and all your assets are. And assets are just things you own, liabilities are things that you owe, and you can do that for your business and you can do it for yourself. And it's great to have them separated, and it's such an easy way to start to understand what your financial situation looks like, and it's free. And all you have to do is connect your accounts, and it's all very safe. And so that is one thing too. Like high yield savings account, if you don't have these two things while you're listening to this podcast, high yield savings account and link all your accounts in Empower, just those two things will probably help you save thousands of dollars because you'll have more visibility into your business, into your personal life, and you'll be making the most of your money that you're saving.
Yes. And when you start, this has been like a really big passion project for me for quarter 3 of my business, was like really understanding where all my money was going. Because we're making great money. And at the end of the month, we're like, where the fuck did it all go? Because so much is like in, out all day long. And you're like, what the hell am I even paying for? It's stupid. Like, this should not be the thing. But then when you sit down and you start looking at it, even just looking at the loans that you have on equipment, if you had to take out business loans, if you were in any of that situation, calculate how much interest you're paying on those things. It will blow your mind if you have taken those and you haven't looked at what your interest rates were on these loans since everything has went through the freaking roof. And we sat down and looked at this stuff, and I was telling my husband, I'm like, holy shit, like we gotta do something here. And if you don't sit down and get really granular with it, it just keeps going out. That could be those thousands of dollars that are going out in interest, could be thousands of dollars going into a retirement account for us later down the road. And instead, we're pissing it away on interest because we haven't been paying attention to our accounts. So it's so important.
Yeah, it's so important. And you talk about self-care a lot, which I love, which is so important, right? Like you have to prioritize yourself, especially if you're working in a service-based business, especially if you're running things, like you have to prioritize self-care. Managing your money is the ultimate form of self-care because money is the number one source of anxiety for most people. And so people will say, "Oh, I'll get a massage, I'll do this." And that's all great. Like, no shame. Definitely get a massage. So worth it. But also block time to figure out your finances and to learn a little bit about investing and to see a little bit about what your cash flow is doing. Even just like half an hour a week, looking at your statements, picking a topic, having like a money date like once a week can totally change your entire life. You can learn a piece of information that'll trigger you to invest that can lead to thousands of dollars later on in your life. So I think that's another thing that as business owners, you're so busy. I honestly am not always, I'm a financial coach and I'm not always great at this, to be totally honest. So I have this blocked in my calendar, education time for myself. But if you can look at personal finance and your money as something that you have to create a relationship with and the ultimate form of self-care, because if you get that under control, you can massively reduce your anxiety and build your wealth. And like, what a great combination of things to do, right?
Oh, I just recorded a podcast this morning and I was speaking to someone that is a registered nurse. We were talking about how important it is to focus on your health. And we were talking about nutrition being one of those parts of health. But at the end of the podcast, we were talking about how incredibly important it is to understand that health is a variety of things. It's not just what you eat, it's not just exercise, but so much of it is mindset and that stress management, because everybody's got stress. They've got some form of stress somewhere. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom and you're ready to pull your hair out because your kids are screaming all day long, or you're at work and you've got financial stress or something else going on, everybody's got it somewhere. But that financial stress has literally been one of the things that has kept me so unhealthy. Really, it has. And it has really been because I'm like, I don't understand it. And this is where I want to lead into this with you. Kind of like, I don't really understand it. So I'm just doing the best that I can. And that's why this year I was like, no, fuck this. I can't live like this anymore. I'm going to kill someone. Because I was so like just out of my mind, stressed out all the time. I take it out on my poor kids when I got home. Like my poor husband would get it from me all the time. But I was so stressed out about the financial status of my business, which actually is really pretty freaking good when I sat down and looked at it, but I just didn't know. And so really like talking to yourself and figuring out what that mind block is for you around finances. What are some of the things that you see with women that are their biggest roadblock, mind block, fuck with your mind about money situation and why they kind of bury their heads in the sand and don't deal with it?
Yeah, the biggest one I hear, there's two that I hear all the time. Well, there's a lot. That money is very complicated and there's a lot of emotion behind it. But the two that I hear most often is I'm bad at money. Like it's just like not something I'm good at. And people say that like you're born, like you come out of the womb and you either get it or you don't. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Just like anything else in your life, if you're growing a business, right? You started that thing maybe from nothing and look what you've grown, right? And that's because you learned and you developed skills. Money is just a skill. And actually investing and budgeting, all that stuff, it's not necessarily hard. It's pretty simple, but it's a skill that has a different language. So when you hear the financial jargon, it feels overwhelming and it feels complicated. But once you learn the language, it gets much easier. So if you're sitting there thinking like I'm bad at money or I've never been good at personal finance or whatever, you might not be good yet. But my challenge to you, and I would do this gently and with grace because it's super overwhelming and sometimes that can make us not even decide to take action on it. How much time have you actually spent learning about it? Have you read a book about personal finance? Have you listened to a podcast more than once about personal finance, right? And most of the time the answer is no. And I don't say that with shame. Most people haven't. What the reason I say that is so that we can dismantle this limiting belief that you're bad at money. You're not bad at money. It's just unfamiliar. You just haven't learned it yet. If you're a business owner, you're way more freaking badass. You've done way harder things than learn how to manage your money and invest, like way harder things. Managing a business is way harder than setting up a simple investment portfolio on autopilot and having it help you build passive income over time. Like that takes a matter of weeks and some intentional effort. Building a business is far more difficult. So that's the first one, is just like, in general, I'm bad at money. The other one I hear is I'm short on time. Like I don't have enough time. And to validate you, of course, if you're a business owner or you have family, all this stuff is very hard to find the time. But those 4 steps I outlined earlier, figuring out what your cash flow looks like, figuring out a retirement account that's going to help you save on taxes, and then choosing simple investments, you can do that in 4 weeks. I do that in my small group coaching program. We do that in 4 weeks' time. And we have one weekly call and they have about 45 minutes of videos a week. And by the end of that, they're able to set up a simple portfolio. Are they millionaires by the end of the 4 weeks? No, but they understand how to get there and how to make their money work for them. And so we do that in a very short period of time. And what's really important too is to find, again, this goes back to when I was saying, as you're journeying into the personal finance world, there's dozens of creators and there's a lot of people that genuinely want to help you. Find somebody that speaks to you, that explains stuff in a way that makes sense, and then take small steps and you can get much further than you think in a pretty short amount of time. But being short on time is not a good excuse. And quite frankly, with the economy the way it is, like you can't afford to wait on this stuff, right? The number one regret that every single person I talk to has about investing, once they learn how simple it is, especially, is shit, I should have done this like way earlier. Because you can't go back in time, right? You can't go back in time and invest more. You can start now and then grow your money over time. And you can, if you don't have a lot of money to invest now, that's okay. You can get started and add more as you go, but you can't go back in time and invest more. So that's my number one piece of advice. If you're sitting there like, I don't have time right now, I'll do it later. If you do it later, you're leaving money on the table. And that's why it's so important to get started as soon as possible.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. You know what? And so talk to us about, let's just say our listeners are between like 35 to 50 is our demographic. If they are just new or they don't have anything set up or they're very interested in getting started on something, a lot of times I think we feel like, shit, what do I do now? Like I am retiring in 10 to 20 years, 10 to 30 years. Do I have time to still make substantial traction with this? Because you see like the graphics of like the 22-year-old that invested up to 30 and then they were a millionaire at 50 and you're like, well, fuck, I'm 50 and I own $10,000. So tell us what would be a good strategy or an idea to put in place if you're in that age range and what you should be focusing on.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say is, so that is the age range of the people that I coach investing in. All of them are about 35 to 50. And that is a very common time for either something to happen in your life that triggers you to realize that you need to pay attention to this now, or you've paid off your debt and you're like, okay, I want to invest more, whatever it is. And so the first thing I'll say is that you are not alone. And the vast majority of people between 35 and 50 aren't investing thoughtfully. If they are, it's very passive. Maybe they're contributing to some kind of employer plan, or there's not a lot of people that have it all figured out. It might feel that way and it might look that way based on what you see on social media, but that's definitely not the case. And that's one reason I love doing small group coaching, is because I have all these badass, amazing women between the ages of 30 and 50, 35 and 50, and all of them feel behind. Every single one. And so I share that with you because it's so important to know, first of all, that you're not alone and you're not that far behind. You can make incredible difference in your life with a couple of intentional years. And I love this idea of 3 to 5 intentional years of really buckling down on your expenses, maybe making some sacrifices, not buying the car you want, maybe, staying in the house you're already in that's a little bit more affordable for a couple years to get a little bit ahead. You might realize that you want to make some decisions to kind of fast track your wealth building. And I think that's a really important thing to think about. 35, you still have 30 years until traditional retirement age. That's a lot of time for your money to compound. And compound interest is the way you make money, right? So just making no assumptions here. If you start contributing now, in the next 5-10 years, you might not see a huge difference in your wealth, but in your 15-20, that money that you've started to generate is going to compound on itself and make more money. So you invest, it grows, and then you have this bigger amount that's back in the stock market and it's growing again. And so the graph is exponential, right? It starts out kind of horizontal and then all of a sudden it shoots up. And that happens around the 10, 15, 20 year mark. So if you're 35 to 50, you still have plenty of time to make a huge difference in what your retirement is going to look like. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to start investing all the money you have today, but you do need to start as soon as possible so you can take advantage of compound interest. So it is I'm glad you brought that up, because most people I talk to feel like they're behind, feel like, and the worst part is that prevents people from getting started. And that's like the worst thing you can do, because every year that you put this off, you're putting off an opportunity for you to build your wealth. So I will say 35 to 50 is very common. That is why actually I coach that age range. I mean, that's my age range. So I identify with women that age, but that is a great time to figure it out, because you still have, 10, 20, 30 years to make a huge difference in what your life is going to look like.
Yes. Oh, so good. So good. So while you were talking about this, I thought of another amazing question that I've had conversations with my girlfriends about before too. So let's say 35 to 50, if people have a spouse, they're married, okay? What does the marriage have any kind of hold on what, let's say, for example, say I'm really interested in investing and my husband isn't so interested in investing. That's not the case at all, but I'm setting the stage here. So I want to invest money and I'm really concerned about my retirement and I want to do things. But my husband is like, whatever, like he's still blowing it off type of thing. Is there, like, what would you say to a woman if you were coaching her in that situation? Is your investment future, your retirement, strictly on you to do that? Is there any implications because your husband doesn't want to participate? Like, how would you coach her to make sure she's got her own ass covered when it comes to that time, rather than sitting and waiting for someone that really isn't into it or doesn't get it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right off the bat, I'll say that every single person, partnered or not, needs to get a basic financial education, because you never know what can happen. Women tend to live longer, first of all. So if your partner is managing the money, that's something that you want to make sure you understand. You never know what can happen with your relationship. Obviously, I actually work with a lot of women that have just gotten divorced, because then they're like, oh shit, now I have to figure this out myself. And I hate that for them, because I want them to be grieving and taking care of themselves, like not worrying about money. So if you're listening to this and you don't know what's happening with your finances right now, like this is the moment that you need. This is your sign that you need to go figure it out, because you just never know what's going to happen. That goes for both people in the relationship. Anything could happen to one or the other person. And if you guys care about each other and you're on this path together, it's your responsibility to make sure that regardless of what happens, you guys are going to be okay. And to do that, you both need to have a basic understanding. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you're really interested in it and your husband's not, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like force them to get interested, but they should know what accounts you have, how they're invested. And then if they're not interested because they want to spend money, then that's a goal alignment problem, right? So that's where you have to back up and say, okay, where do we want to be in 10 to 20 years? What do we want our life to look like? How much money do we need to live that life? And we talked earlier about the 4% rule. Like if you want to live off $50,000 a year, you need 1.25 million in retirement roughly, and you could withdraw. That's about 50,000 is about 4% of 1.25 million. And so if you'll recall, that 4% rule is how much you can withdraw every single year. If 50,000 is not enough for you to live off of every year, then you're going to want to have a lot more than 1.25 in retirement, right? And that is a conversation that you want to have now with your partner to figure out how much money you all want to live off of in retirement and then how you're going to get there. And I think that's the jumpstart, right? If somebody's just spending money, they might not have ever thought about how much money they want to have in retirement. And that's okay. That's common. So I think starting with aligning on the goals and then figuring out how to get there. And one person is always going to be more interested in the money, and that's okay. But at a basic level, everyone should understand what the goal is, what types of accounts we're investing in and using to save on taxes, and the basic setup of the investments and why. And if you understand both those things, you don't have to both manage it all the time. And the type of investing that I teach people is very hands-off. It's pretty much autopilot stuff. You're just investing in, funds that hold a bunch of stocks. It's not super complicated. Anybody can learn it in a short amount of time. The other reason I will say this is so important for both parents is for your kids. If you want to build generational wealth and you want your kids to understand the implication and the benefit of investing, Tanya, you just said, right? There's all these examples of like, if you start investing in your 20s, like you can be a millionaire in 60 by investing $200 a month. And you're like, cool, I'm in my 40s. Like, thank you. That's not super helpful, but if you have kids, like that's an opportunity for you to get them on the right path. So there's so much value in both parents understanding. And even as a business owner for your employees, right? If you can understand the basics of this for them as well and help them. And, you might not be in a place to educate or to have retirement plans for your employees, but you can start with basic education, give them access to like a basic beginner investing course, whatever it is. There's so many ways to get educated simply. But back to your question, which I have now gone a total tangent on here.
No, you're great. I was going there next.
back to the point is, aligning on goals is going to be the most important thing. And then that might trigger, a change in behavior once you're tracking towards the same thing.
Yes. Set it on the calendar and have a money date. Somebody said that to me once before too. And I was like, ugh. And don't drink before you do this. There can be emotions happening with this thing. You got to look at it really as being inquisitive and not questioning, like I'm interested to learn about your goals. Let them talk. Don't grill them, because just helpful information from learned mistakes. It's good to be able to come into that. But if you're not on the same page, it's so difficult. And that's where I wanted to go next, is when you were talking about the children. Like a lot of the listeners of this podcast are moms too, and they have kids and they are very interested in providing a different kind of life for their kids or educating them on things. If you're a listener to this podcast, we talk a lot about like talking to your kids about opportunities to make money that don't include just going to college to learn how to be a good employee. Like there's great entrepreneurial things you can do. We just set up my daughter. She really wants to own her own salon one day. She'll have her cosmetology license before she gets out of high school. And it's free because there's a program here in Arizona where she can do that as a junior and senior in high school. She'll already have it and be ready to go to work with that when she gets out of high school. So it's really talking to them about like, what do you want your life to look like versus who do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want your life to look like? My big thing as a business owner is if you're a business owner and you have children and you can, if at all, like put them on payroll, pay them. First of all, you're like starting this whole history for them anyways, and then take some of that money and just sock it into an account. If you're doing, I have a 401k that I offer my employees. They're employees, and I took the age restriction off of it. You can do that to where my 10 and 14-year-old have 401k accounts that they're contributing to, which my business is matching what they're putting in there up to 5%. So they're getting that money. By the time, they get to retirement age, or if they continue with their own 401ks, or shit, if it only goes till they're 20 and it just grows in there for them, they're going to have money. They're not going to ever have to worry about that. I would love to set my kids up to where if they have to get a loan for something, they're borrowing money from themselves instead of trying to find it somewhere else and paying for it. There's so many options that you can do with that. But as a financial coach, if a woman is asking you, what is the best thing for me to do as far as like, what's your number one tip in educating kids on finances? What would you tell them?
Assuming that you've already educated yourself, like you understand the basics, the best way is to learn by doing. So even if first of all, I freaking love that you have your kids matching in your 401k. Like that's amazing. So love that. But there are accounts that there are investment accounts, tax advantage investment accounts. So if you'll remember, that's step 3 and 4, right? Is once you have the money that you're investing, you want to figure out the right retirement account that's going to help you save on taxes, and then choose simple investments. And so for kids, you can open up a custodial Roth IRA for them. So a Roth IRA is just, even if they're making any kind of earned income, you can open up this account for them, and then it'll transfer to them at a certain age, depending on what state you live. So a Roth IRA is just a retirement account. You put in after-tax money, so you don't get any tax break in the year that you put it in, but the money grows tax-free, and then you get tax-free withdrawals in retirement. And the value of setting this up for your kids is, one, they learn about retirement accounts because that's how you save on taxes. That's the number one thing you want to start investing. And then you can also choose investments inside that account. Now, for most people, I recommend index funds. Index funds are those funds that we talked about. It's like a basket of a bunch of different stocks. It's the variety pack of investing that makes it easy so you don't have to pick stocks. But if you want to teach your kids about the stock market fluctuations and how unpredictable it is and why it's good to diversify your investments, you could pick a stock for them and have them follow it in their Roth IRA. And so this is why it's so important for you to learn, right? Because if you know this, then you can be like, cool, I'm going to open a Roth IRA. It's in my kid's name, it will be in their name. I'll be the custodian. And then we're going to pick a stock. And so I had one friend do this, and her kids bought Mattel. Mattel owns Barbie, right? So they're identified with, they understand that. Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to buy you the Barbie. Like, no, sweetie, I'm going to buy you a piece of the store. I'm going to buy you a piece of the company that's creating that toy. And probably when they're young, they'll be like, whatever, that sucks. but
take them to the dollar store.
Yeah, but that is a great way for them to learn. I was just on a podcast with this amazing CFO who told me that she did this with her kids, and her daughter wanted Winnebago, and this is before COVID. And so like they're all saying like it's a terrible choice. Like RV sales are like way down, like whatever. And then like 3 months after they buy the stock, COVID hits. And so this, 12-year-old's stocks are like going through the roof. But like such a good way to learn, right? So I really believe in the power of learning by doing. Like, don't just tell them about invest. Like, they're not going to care. But if you like, your ideas about money, by the way, are formed, most of them, by the time you are 7 years old, which is crazy. So they already are very aware of money and how money works and how we transact and how you are transacting in whatever example you are setting. So if you set that example by teaching them what this account is and then paying attention to a stock or a fund, they're going to get excited about that. Like, can you imagine being a kid and you're watching your money grow, or you're watching it going down? You're learning the dangers of the stock market. Whatever it is, it's a learning opportunity. And so that, I think, is the most powerful way that you can break generational curses and set your kids up for success.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. There's so many cool little apps out too. Like I have green light cards for my kids, which is that just keeps getting better and better. It's like $5 a month for like all 5 of my kids to have these, right? So they have their own debit cards, and it has like chore lists for them. So they have to get their chores done. They get that. Then they get $20 that goes into their general account. They have to save some of that. But then they get another $10 that goes into their investing account because Greenlight has set it up to where they can invest in stocks through there, which is so cool to watch them like look at the stocks and be like, oh, look at this graph, like just the conversations. Like my son is obsessed with the Dollar Tree stock, which was so crazy, but it's crazy. Like it's up and it's down and it's all. He's like, this one's exciting, Mom. I'm going to buy some Dollar Tree stock. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's such like a little bit of money that let them play with it, like set up these little accounts for that. I think it's like $15 for the whole like month for all 5 of my kids to have this with the investing part to it. But it's so cool to let them decide, like, what do they like? My daughter's like hell bent on Starbucks, which Starbucks pays dividends all the time every time they announce something. And she's like, I made 40 cents off my one stock of Starbucks, that she was finally able to buy. So they'll let you buy like fractional stocks and stuff. And it's so cool just to see their eyes light up and talk to them about it. But it's so true. We talk about it so much on this podcast that so much more is caught than taught to kids. So they're really watching your money habits. And I didn't really realize how much that was impacting my children until they started getting older. And not only from watching me work really hard as a single mom and be an entrepreneur and having all these business ideas all the time, now my kids have those. Like my son wants a taco truck and then he wants to start a bakery. And my daughter already has like a little sugar scrub business that we go do during the holidays and she sells sugar scrubs that she makes. And it's so cool to be able to see that example come out in the children. Because when I married my husband, he has 3 children too. Their money mindset is extremely different than what my kids' money mindset is. And I think a lot of it is just because they haven't had the conversation, or like both of their parents have been employed, so they haven't been involved in the entrepreneurial world that much. But it's more of like, oh, I don't want to spend your money. Like there's this real scarcity there with things, which I know is a topic of conversation between both sides of that family. And I'm like, that is so interesting because I know they haven't told them like we're short on money or something like that. Like they haven't heard that from direct stuff, but they feel that they get that off of overhearing conversation. So it is really true that even if they're not showing you, you got like a 10-year-old and you're like, I'm not quite sure if they're listening to anything that I'm telling them at this point. The older they get, trust me, they'll show you what they've learned from you. It's like teachers every time, like kindergarten teachers, man, they know everything that's going on at your house all the time because those kids go to school and tell them everything.
Yeah,
which is so cool.
It's so cool. It's so important to understand like the example that you're setting for your kids. And I think that I mean, I think I've said the word education a million times. And that's what this all comes down to, right? Like your financial anxiety, your ability to build wealth, the ability to set your kids up, it all starts with education. And thinking about the way you like to get educated. If you like audiobooks, DM me. I'm at Wealth with Tess on Instagram. I post a ton of, first follow me there. I post a ton of free stuff. If you want to know a book, DM me. I'll send you a book. Like there's just so many, whether it's book or podcast or a paid program, if you need the accountability, whatever it is, there's just endless ways to learn. And that's all this comes down to. And if you find somebody that's cool, that's going to talk to you like a human and not, this is too complicated for you to understand, which by the way, when you were talking about all the financial advisors that come to you and say, let me help you with your money, this and that. A lot of the women, a majority of the women that go through my small group coaching program, they're doing it because they have a financial advisor that's not educating them and they want to be more involved in their money. And every time they ask, they get these answers like, oh, this is too complicated for you to understand. Bullshit. It's not complicated. You just don't want to take the time to educate them because you're threatened for them to have that knowledge. And it's a broken system. So education is the most powerful thing when it comes to your money. And it's really, once you start to get into it and realize how many ways there are to grow your money for yourself, your kids, it starts to actually be fun.
Yes, huge. And it's our responsibility to educate them. So many people you hear like, oh, they don't teach that in school anymore. You're like, no shit, because you were supposed to teach them that in the first place. I don't want somebody else's preconceived notion of what money means to them coming on to my kids. That's a very personal thing to deal with. And that's something that of parents that I think we have to just be much more involved in to make sure that we're getting the right message that we want them to have there. Tess, we have recorded way longer than I told you we were going to. And I knew this was going to happen because I love talking to you. I could talk to you forever about this. We'll definitely have to do another podcast on here. I'm really looking forward to, I want to participate in your groups and stuff because I need that. If you're an entrepreneur, you need accountability with your financials. And that is something I have never had. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 14 years and I've never had somebody saying, So what's up with your money situation? It's just always in here and in my stress and my shoulders and everywhere else. And it's so great you learn so much just from being in the rooms. We were recently just in a room for a conference that we went to together. And it's just so cool to see what comes out of those rooms, because what you might feel like you don't even need help with, you have a conversation with somebody and you're like, I need help with this. And really like you. And so finding someone that you click with, like anybody that listens to this podcast that is like me is going to love Tess. I love to talk to her. She's no bullshit. And that's what we want. And that's what we need to learn from. If you need somebody that talks to you in a different way, like that is so important. And we can help you find those people. The important thing is just make sure that you're seeking something out. But Tess, tell them about your guide that you have, your starter pack. We'll link it in the show notes. It's inclusive of what?
Yeah. So if you are now like ready to take action, which I hope you are, because you can totally do it. You can totally start growing your money through investing. It's so much easier than you think. If one takeaway, it's that I have put together a Savvy Investor Starter Pack. It's totally free. And it has the 4 steps that I outlined of how to get started investing, the order of operations. It has some questions for you to journal on from a money mindset perspective. My favorite thing about it is I actually included a video from my paid program, but you get exclusive access to it. And it's a video on the 8 biggest investing mistakes I see people make, most of which, by the way, I have made. So if you want to avoid those and save thousands of dollars, make sure you download that Savvy Investor Starter Pack, and you'll get all the information in there. And that's going to be the best place to start. And then if you want more info, I'm always yelling about something financially related on Instagram. So if you follow me at Wealth with Tess, and shoot me a DM. I genuinely love talking to people. If you have questions, let me know. I'd love to point you in the right direction. But the guide is going to be the best place to start. You get a bunch of free information and calculators right off the bat.
Excellent. And she has an awesome newsletter that you can sign up for on her website too. So make sure that you do that as well. And she'll send you all kinds of money tips. You'll not know what to do with yourself. You'll have so many tips. Tess, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely incredible. I've learned a lot from you today. I know a lot of women will. And if you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, like, rewind this bitch and listen to it again. Because if you don't want to do something after this conversation, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, because this has been very, very inspiring for me. I'm like, I got to get off of here and start opening some high yield savings accounts and check out all this stuff so I can talk intelligently about this stuff. But Tess, in closing, I love to ask everybody this question, because to talk about a lady kicking ass, you fit the profile, girl. You are doing incredible things. You are using your knowledge to help women in a very sensitive place sometimes they find themselves in. And I think it's so incredibly important to continue educating women on financial situations and empower them to take control over their own financial destiny. So when you hear the phrase ladies kicking ass, what does that mean to you in your life?
To me, that means doing everything I can to make decisions against my core values. So I think every person can take value, or I think there's value in every person figuring out their core values. So my 2 top core values are be grateful and everything is figure outable. And those 2 things have helped me kick ass in so many ways, because one, if you're grateful for what you already have, like that's how you attract more, right? And I am so grateful. I did not come from a place where I thought I would be here, having a net worth of $1 million, especially when I lost so much money in my 20s and had such a scarcity mindset and had such a fear of money growing up. So I'm just like so grateful and jazzed that I get to do this. And this is my job. Like I can't even freaking believe it when I wake up in the morning. So being grateful, and then also realizing that literally everything is figure outable. And if you have a dream, if it's in you, it's for you, there's a way to figure it out. And so adopting that mindset that there is a way to figure, and it might not look like the way that you think it's going to look, but you're going to figure out something and it's going to be cool. And so that's really, I guess, my answer. If I'm kicking ass, if I'm grateful, and if I'm figuring out how to get what I want.
So good. So good. That is one of my favorite terms ever, is everything is figure outable, because it really truly is. In today's world, if you can't find shit, that's on you, because you can literally Google anything. So you can figure it out. And thank you so much for providing these financial resources for women and making it simple so they don't have to Google it. They can just come to you, Tess, and then you can help them with all that good stuff. Thank you so much. And I look forward to doing another podcast episode with you guys. I know that financials is a huge thing that we get a lot of conversation about in the community. So maybe we could do another one. Tess, we'll ask for some questions from people and see what we can do about doing that, or pull you into a mastermind with our membership. So we can educate a bunch more ladies and get them empowered around this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. I think you're so awesome and you're doing such kick-ass stuff, and I'm just super grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being part of the Ladies Kickin' Ass community. Cheers to all you badass women out there. Keep rocking your power, igniting your fire, and making waves in the service industry. If you loved today's episode, please do me a quick favor. Take a screenshot, post it, and tag us at Ladies Kickin' Ass. Be sure to include the link to your favorite episode. Your support in spreading the word means the world to us as we aim to empower even more women. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more kick-ass episodes. And don't forget, a 5-star review is the ultimate high five. Connect with us on social media. All the links are in the show notes. Thank you for being part of our tribe. Now go kick some serious ass, lady. Hey there, ladies. Want to supercharge your personal growth journey with insights from the best in the business? I've got a treat for you. I have been raving throughout many of these podcasts about this incredible self development app called Growth Day. Imagine learning from industry powerhouses like Mel Robbins, Ed Milet, my girl Lori Harder, Brendan Burchard, Mel Abraham, Lisa Bilyeu. Oh my gosh, there's so many more. And guess what? Every Wednesday, they teach live that you can watch them and interact with them through this app. It's so incredibly cool. Beyond their wisdom and live coaching sessions, there is another incredible feature that I am obsessed with, though: the journal section. I use it every single day, whether it's either to brain dump, reflect on my feelings, remember things for my business, or dive deep with their brilliant journal prompts. I'm never at a loss for words when I sit down to journal. How freaking amazing is that? And because you're part of our podcast family, there's a special treat awaiting you. Click the link in the show notes below to check it all out. Embark on an incredible journey with Growth Day. Remember, every new day is an opportunity to grow, reflect, and evolve. And that is what we do as ladies who are kicking ass.